Let's see if we could turn this sideways, maybe. Oh, orientation is locked. All right, whatever. Okay. Let's get set up over here. I guess if you're tuning in right now, I'm gonna give some people some time to get in. So we will start in like a second. Sorry for the delay. Again, if you guys are joining now, give me 1 second. Bear with me. Just going to pull up my notes over here. Get ready. Da, 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 da. 1 second. Alrighty. All right. Let's hop into it. All right, so if you're joining now, we're going to give some motivation tips for guitarists. The motivation part is really applicable to everybody. And then we'll get into some stuff that specifically help for guitarists. Hey, what's going on? How you doing? So, all right, so I just got some notes over here. Don't mind me, guys. What's going on? So we're gonna start with the motivation part of it, and then we'll get into more like specific tips and tricks for guitar itself. So, and bear with me if you're just coming for the guitar part, you can always circle back a little later in like 5-10 minutes or something like that. So the first thing I want to talk about is affirmations and visualization. And, some of you have probably heard those words before, some of you might have not. But I cannot explain to you how true those concepts are and how much I believe in it, and how much I've worked on it over the years. When I started playing guitar about 10 years ago, I wasn't good. Like people will look at me now and be like, oh, wow, you're such a good guitarist and whatever. But when I started back then, I was just the same as like everybody else, picking it up, not knowing what the hell I was doing, struggling with it. And I had this vision in my head, of I wanted to be like a master musician. And it wasn't so clear back then. It really took, I think, a lot more years for me to kind of really, really build that up in my head. Um, but, I really believe like if you can visualize it here, if you can see it in your head, it can come true. And I'm sure it's with anything, I mean, I'd like to say anything, almost anything. You really, really have such power. And then when you like accomplish your dreams, everybody, once you start getting there, everybody's like, wow, okay, oh, I knew he could do it, or wow, you're so talented. But they don't realize how much time you spent and you were sitting there and behind closed doors, nobody knowing what was going on and just sitting there and working on it. When people say like, "Oh, you're talented," I'm like, I don't really know what that means. I'm like, maybe I have some talent, some natural ability, but do you know the amount of hours, the thousands of hours I sit there working on it? Behind closed doors when nobody's noticing, when nobody's cheering you on. And again, this is why I say this is applicable for anything in life. I've definitely used it with other stuff also. I would just say that obviously guitar and music is my main passion that I chase. Um, but it's literally creating a vision in my head who I'm going to be and going for it and going for it every single day or most of the time, whether you feel like it, you don't feel like it, just chasing it and chasing it and chasing it. And it's like remarkable, like now that I see my dreams like coming true, it's crazy. I know where it started. I know that it started here and I know that it continues to be built over here. And again, like everybody then wakes up one day and they're like, oh wow, like how do you do it? But it really starts here. So you got to start with visualization and affirmation. You decide what you want, or even if you're not sure, you could kind of, at least start. And you sit there and you visualize it. What would it look like? The guy or the man or the woman who can do that, what would they act like? What would that dream look like? And you picture it here and you tell yourself, I am getting it. I'm getting it. I'm there. I have a list of things I tell myself when I wake up every day, and I read it, and that's a personal thing I'm admitting right now in life, and I create that vision and that dream in my head, and I'm telling you, when those things start coming true, it is insane. It's crazy. It's like it's almost unbelievable, you know. So really, really, guys, affirmations. If you don't know what affirmation means, it's just telling yourself repeated things. So let's say you want to be very in shape. So you tell yourself, I am in shape, I am in shape, I am in shape. And the visualization is you visualize it. What would that look like? Get it clear in your head. What do you want? How are you going to get there? Um, I'm telling you, I cannot tell you how powerful this stuff is and how much it works. I'm not saying this just to, throw a little bit of positivity at you. I live my life this way. And people around me are now seeing a lot of those stuff come true. And again, they throw out words like talent and this and that. And for me, I know how much I work. Now, I want to add into that. You can visualize all you want and you can affirm you all you want, but you really have to take action. You gotta work for it as well. So, you can't just sit there on your bed and just, be, I mean, you can start that way, but eventually you gotta put in action. And that's why I say, let's say with guitar, the amount of hours I sit there and I study and I practice and I work on it is incredible. I'm gonna get to comments soon. So, but I appreciate it. I see you guys. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. But and I will take a point where I'll kind of take some questions and correspond with you guys. But so action, guys, action is so important. You can have the affirmation, you can have the visualization. If you just sit there on your bed, it's not necessarily going to go anywhere. For me, it started with dreams, and I wasn't so happy at that time. I was pretty depressed, and through dreaming of those stuff and taking action, it's incredible to see where it's taking me. If you want to know, I've read like a lot of books, and I've heard a lot about this. My journey with this type of stuff started with a mentor of mine many years ago. I would say many years ago. I'm not that old, but years ago, he was the first one to kind of clue me in that there's this whole inner world in our heads and in our hearts that's going on. And unless we start to control that, unless we start to have input over there, it's just like, come on, how are you going to get where you want to go? And he was the one that really started, inspiring me to change the way I think and change the way I feel. And then I started, researching and reading a lot and all that stuff. And I want to say I'm a practical minded guy, so it's not like I have my head in the clouds. I'm just telling you, this stuff is real. Like, it's in every society in the past, in every philosophy, someone's tried to reveal the secret to people. If you want to read a little more about it, I would recommend Napoleon Hill. Again, that's Napoleon, like, that guy Napoleon, and last name is Hill, Hill. Look into him. He's written some great books on it, and he really, I feel, does a great job of giving that philosophy over without it sounding too. I mean, there's a book out there called The Secret, which talks about manifestation and all of that stuff, which is part of this. But I feel like sometimes it could turn people off because it makes it sound a little bit too, in the clouds. So maybe check out Napoleon Hill. So maybe I'll circle back to this in the end to anyone who joins the live later. But again, this stuff is so, so, so important. So just to review, affirmation, visualization, manifestation, it's all the same stuff, just, kind of different, working at it from different angles. And then work ethic. Okay. So another thing I want to say about work ethic, and I'm gonna pause for a second just to look at this comment. Hey Rowdy, what's going on? What's up with Daddy? And Marvel. Hey, I really appreciate that. And I agree with you. Dreams are guaranteed to come true if you work on it, and you as well. Um, so I also just want to talk about, work ethic. One of the things I really like thinking about is like, if you want results that other people don't get, you got to be willing to do what other people don't do. So sometimes people hear about my practice routine or how I work, and they hear, oh my God, like you're practicing guitar 4 to 8 hours a day. Like, oh my God. And I'm like, well, I plan on getting results that most people won't get. I plan on being the biggest musician, you know what I mean? Biggest guitarist. So I put in the action that other people won't necessarily put in. And guys, the feeling of self-confidence and self-esteem it gives you when you sit there and you know that behind closed doors, without any encouragement, without anybody telling you anything, you're sitting there and you're working, it's unmatched. It's literally incredible. Um, so before we hop into more guitar stuff, I'm gonna give, this is actually also again applies to guitar. And yeah, just to relate this all this stuff back to guitar, what I'm trying to say is if you want to be the best guitarist out there, you can be that. I mean, you're gonna be in competition with me because I'm trying. But you got what you got what I'm saying. Like, you just gotta put in the work. That is it. Put in the work. Create it here and it'll come true. I'm telling you, day after day after day. I love telling people it's not about today, it's not about tomorrow. I'm not concerned about today, tomorrow, 5 days from now, 6 months from now. It's a long-term plan. And for me, again, it's already been 10 years in the making, and I continue to go at it, and that's what it's about. And I feel like especially in like Western culture, we're very focused on the short term. We're very focused on today, tomorrow, and sometimes we don't think about what about in a year from now? What about in 5 years from now? What about in 10 years from now? You know what I mean? You got to start thinking like that. Like you're not going anywhere. God willing, you're gonna be here in 5 years. You're gonna be here in 10 years. You're gonna be here in 20 years. Start thinking like that, and let people laugh at you. It doesn't. And I'm telling you, that's another thing. I'm just thinking of more things as we go. Let people laugh at you because I've definitely had people when I said, I'm sure when I told them, oh, I'm going to be a great guitarist, and I was sitting there plunking around, they probably, laughed at me. And I've definitely had people when they, laugh at me when I've quit jobs or when I've, dedicated myself to, to music and, come on, how are you going to make a career out of that? How are you going to do that? Maybe they wouldn't necessarily always laugh, in front of me. Maybe they'd kind of, but you could tell like what they were thinking. But I'm telling you, you gotta fuck what everybody else thinks. You know what I mean? If you have a dream and you know what you want and you work towards it, like you will get there. All right, let's talk about another thing before we go into actual advice for guitarists. Take advice from everybody, okay? And this is again something in life, and of course, it's something that I'm not perfect on. I work on, and I think we're probably all not perfect on, and we should work on more. Everybody has got something to tell you, and sometimes the best advice comes from the least expected places, and it's very easy to get arrogant and be like, well, I know more than that person, or what does that person have to offer me? But I'm telling you, like, sometimes, like, I'll get good tips from, like, a musician who's objectively, like, way, worse than me. Um, I'll get life tips from somebody who I think, like, oh man, what does that person have to offer me? And they have, tons to offer me. So, especially when it comes to anything, but again, I'm trying to relate this specifically to musicians and to guitarists. Like, be humble. Always be learning. As much as you know, there's always something to learn. It's really like an endless, world. And sorry, just losing my train of thought a little bit. Um, and yeah, it's really an endless world, and just be willing and be open to learn from other people. To take advice. I'm telling you, some of the biggest moves I've taken, especially with like social media and stuff like that, has come from advice coming from people like they just I don't know had nothing to do with it or just you wouldn't expect it. And but I'm telling you, like when it's right, and it's important to be humble. And sometimes I'll catch myself and I'm like, you're not being humble right now. You're thinking you know everything. I'm like, come on, I don't know everything. Nobody knows everything. You know what I mean? There's always um, what to learn. So, all right. So those are some general stuff. Again, you want to be the best guitarist. You want to be the best musician. Visualize it, create it here, and it'll happen. Have work ethic. So that means take action in addition to dreaming. You want to take action. And then also taking advice from everybody because there's always something that somebody has to offer you. All right. At this point, let's hop a little bit into more guitar related things. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is and again I'm doing this on this live right now, but I'm sure in the future I'll do another live or I'll do a video and I'll cover this stuff again. So it's very important to get comfortable like in all situations. And what I mean by that is if you want to be a true master guitarist, that means you have to master as much as you can. Okay. And a lot of times I feel people make the mistake, and I've made this mistake of, being very one dimensional. whether that's in how you practice, whether it's sitting or standing, eyes closed, eyes open, whether it's the style you play, only rock, only blues, whether it's the type you play, only acoustic, only electric, um, and like to a certain extent, you can pick where you want to specialize, of course. But it's very important to be, if you want to be a master, expose yourself to as much things as possible, as much ways of practicing as possible. And if anything, like if you find that you're uncomfortable with something, like if you're not used to it, that's something to hammer down on. I'll give you an example. Um, a lot of times when you're practicing guitar, let me just make sure. Sorry, I'm just gonna turn on my electric. Okay. Let's make sure we got some volume over here. All right, just so I can demonstrate a little more what I mean. All right, let's just make sure my Bluetooth is okay, perfect. All right, I don't know how well it's tuned, but it'll definitely do for the demonstration. So, like an example of what I mean is, let's say, people are very used to, let's say, playing pentatonics, or something like that in regular positions, let's say. But what about when it comes to, let's say, the open, when you're in E, right? So, right, it gets harder, you know what I mean? And really anything, any scale, anything like that, it could definitely be more difficult in the open position. So that's just an example of what I mean. You want to expose yourself to as much things as possible, and you want to catch yourself. Like, okay, if you have difficulty there, that's something to nail down on. Another thing, I regularly like practice sitting down, and then I noticed, okay, I got to practice standing up some more. So you want to do that as well. Eyes closed, eyes open, rhythm, soloing, like that's another big thing. I love soloing, so that was something I primarily did. And then I realized at a certain point, like my rhythm really suffered, and I was, going to jams or something, and I just wasn't able to keep a steady rhythm. So I realized I got to put a lot more work into rhythm as well. So this is what I mean. You want to, as much, and then another thing I realized, at a certain point, I'm like, oh, I'm only doing electric, I'm actually going to switch that tone. Give me 1 second. Right, so that was another thing. I realized, like, oh, I'm playing electric, I'm going whatever, but I'm not sitting there and actually laying down clean rhythms. And that was a big reason why I got an acoustic and why I started going to other jams and stuff like that. So again, it's a big piece of advice. You can apply it however you want, but try to expose yourself to as many things as possible. Different styles of playing, rock, pop, jazz, blues, whatever it is, soul. Practice sitting, standing, different positions. Practice your open, practice closed. Do all these sorts of stuff. Also, guys, if you're watching and you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. It will really mean a lot to me. Let's talk about some other stuff. Yeah, I guess I would add into that also practice different time signatures. Okay, so if you're not sure what time signatures are, there's your regular what we're mostly used to playing. Your 4/4. So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But then there's also different time signatures. There's 3/4, which is the classic like waltz, which is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Right? There's 6/8, which is similar to 3/4, but it's felt a little differently. So it would be something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? You want to practice the different time signatures because that's going to definitely pop up as well. Practicing by ear, guys, that's also very important. It was something I think I neglected for a while. I definitely did with soloing, but I didn't do as much with rhythm. You're going to definitely be in situations, unless you're purely playing in your bedroom, where you're going to have to pick things up by ear. So it's very important to learn to pick up things by ear. A very good way is honestly going to jams, because a lot of times they'll just suggest a song and nobody will tell you what key it's in, nobody will tell you what chords are in. So you're going to have to kind of figure out pretty fast what's going on. So that could be a very good way of practicing. But another thing which I like to do is also just taking songs. It could either be your favorite songs, or you could just go on, let's say, the Billboards, top 100 or something like that, and sitting there with the song and trying to figure it out, and try not to get like frustrated with yourself. Like it is normal, but like if you don't get it in a minute or two, like keep going. You know what I'm saying? Keep trying to figure it out because I've heard from somebody it's much better to sit there for a half hour and like figure out nothing than it is to do like 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Like sit there and actually try to figure out what's my one chord. You know, oh that's my one chord, and then you figure out oh it actually goes to the four chord. Oh okay, it goes to the five chord. You know what I mean? Like spend time trying to figure that out. It will help you so much, guys. Like, you know what I mean? Figuring out things by ear is super, super important. And it's funny because people look at improvising, soloing as harder, but I kind of find it easier because most of the time, unless it's something super complex like jazz or whatever, you know, once you figure out your key, like let's say you figure out you're in C, right? So you're like, well, I was playing arpeggios, but my point is, you figure out you're in C. All right, like now all you really have to do is play a C major scale, and you're basically good to go. Or you can just play your pentatonic, you know, right? So the point is that you know you have that scale, and you kind of just noodle around with it or mess around with it, and it'll sound pretty okay. Whereas when it comes to chords, it's not exactly the same. I mean, a lot of times you could pass with some wrong chords, but you gotta kind of be like in the ballpark. You know, what I mean, if they're playing let's say C G A minor F, right? Right, and you start going, I don't know. Let's say you start trying. You start with a D minor, and then you switch to E minor. Right, you're just not gonna. It's just not gonna work. So that's something that's kind of important. Practice on working by ear. While we're on that subject, I kind of touched on it. Play with other musicians, guys. Oh my God, I cannot stress how important this is. There are so many, and I was definitely guilty of this in the past. Also, there's so many musicians who all they do is sit there in their bedroom or whatever and play, and you don't realize how much you're missing out on feel and on stuff like that without playing with other musicians. You really try. I'm aware that not everybody can. It's hard. You know what I mean? Um, I find that for younger people, it probably tends to be a little easier because you're in school or whatever. Once you get a little older, you have a career. It can be a bit tougher to find musicians to practice with, but it is so important to jam with people because it'll train you on all of this stuff, on feel, on improvising over chord changes, on playing things that you're not familiar with. I mean, it's so so important, and I know that this is something that's talked about. It's not just definitely not just me who points this out. Um, it's super super important. You got to jam with other musicians if you really really want to make it. And my one of my guitar teachers loves saying, um, you'll see so many like bedroom guitarists who are like great guitarists and can make great YouTube videos, but then when they try to jam with people, they just don't got it because they're not doing it. And there's a lot that comes from jamming with people versus just going over a backing track or something like that. So that's something that's super super important as well. Let's talk about practice routine and tracking exercises. So practice, guys, super super important. If you're just sitting there every single day and just noodling around, I mean, like you'll get somewhere. You know what I mean? But you gotta have a solid practice routine. Take things that you want to work on and make yourself a practice routine. It doesn't have to be the longest thing in the world. It could be 20 minutes a day. You know what I mean? But make it a routine. Make it, every day I'm going to do this, or every 2 days, or whatever it is. But make it a routine. This is what I do. So so important. And while we're on the, I often think it's probably better to practice like 20 minutes a day every day than it is to practice like 2 hours, like once a week. Like because it's not so much always about the length of time you're practicing. It's about the routine. It's about making it a habit, and it really goes like that with everything. Um, Everything that I can probably think of. So definitely, sorry, I just keep checking on my laptop, but definitely you want to set yourself a practice routine. One thing that helps a lot also is keeping track of your exercises. So as time goes on and you have more and more things to practice, I mean, at this point, I have so many things that I practice. Keeping track of it can be very helpful. I actually have an Excel spreadsheet where I keep track of a lot of the drills and the exercises I do, and then some of the stuff that can't necessarily be tracked as easily in Excel. I write down. I have tons of notes. I have stuff on my laptop. Guys, so important. I once heard, I'm trying to remember where I heard this, but if you're not tracking something, you don't really care about it. You know what I mean? Something like that. Like anything you really want to improve on and you care about, track for the most part. I guess so. So yeah. All right, another conceptual thing, guys. I heard this from probably a bunch of players, and I think it's like a really great piece of advice. A lot of times, and I remember my main guitar teacher, was Berkeley graduate and everything. I remember he said this once. I think he said something to this effect, like, we came in, he put on a backing track, and I was just sitting there like noodling, like whatever, just doing whatever. And sometimes it's about less notes. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard. I can't really put on a backing track right now because I'm actually recording this on my phone, and I don't have Wi-Fi in my apartment right now. Whatever, long story. But, I wish I could put on a backing track to kind of demonstrate this. Like, sometimes it's about less notes, especially if you have something nice and slow. We're tempted to, like, throw in as many notes as we can. But sometimes, the feel is really just like, I don't know, like. Whatever. It would be a lot easier to demonstrate with the backing track. But my point is, sometimes it's about less notes. Sometimes less is more, and you don't have to sitting there throw in a shitload of notes and whatever. Take it easy, calm, feel the music. That's part of it too. Feel what's the vibe, what's trying to be expressed through this music, through the backing track, through what other instrumentalists are playing, through what you're bringing out. I guess just the last thing I would. Another thing, be conscious of time. Keep your foot tapping. Okay, so if I got a beat going on and it's 4/4 timing, whatever, you keep that foot tapping, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Have that foot moving. Be conscious of the time. You don't want to lose track of time. This is, or this or whatever, is your basically your internal metronome. Every time you use a metronome, you're training yourself. You're training yourself to have like your own internal metronome. So that way when you play, you don't have to have the metronome playing. You got your foot tapping. Keep your foot tapping. Guys, get to know your scales. Okay. Man, it's such a shame sometimes when I play with talented musicians who are really, really good, and they're good. They can solo, they can do all this, whatever. And then I ask them, hey, do you know what a major scale is? No. Do you know what a minor scale is? No. Do you know what the blues scale is? No. Like, guys, that is your bread and butter. That's what I'm saying? Like, you can only go so long, I feel like, trying to just mess around by ear. You know what I mean? You really gotta be conscious of your scales, and they give you the different tools of what you can do, what sounds right. It's almost like you got to know the rules in order to break them. You know what I mean? Like, at a certain point, you can do whatever you want with music, but if you don't even know the rules and the basic structures, like, come on now. So get to know your scales. At the very least, start with your major scale. That's a C major scale, right? And ideally, you want to be able to play that everywhere in the entire thing. So you want to be able to play it from top to bottom. Right? You want to be able to play it in this position. And you also want to be able to play the standard and the 3 notes per string. If you weren't aware of that, now you're aware. There's 2 different versions, okay? Let's say in my major scale, I have a standard position, and I have my 3 notes per string, and I could demonstrate both. My standard would look something like this. I'm doing it in C major. And then my 3 notes per string, which is super good for shredding and stuff like that, is exactly what it sounds like. It's going to have 3 notes on every string. Okay? Both super important. Both can be used a little differently. Both are so important. Okay? So you want your standard position. You want your 3 notes per string. Again, your scales, at the very least, know your major, know your minor. Okay? Once you do that, get to know your blues scale. Get to know your pentatonic. Okay, your pentatonic is just 5 notes, so super easy, right? right? Guitarists love that, okay? You get to know your pentatonic, get to know your major, get to know your minor. Once you're done with that, you can get to know your blues scale, right? You throw in the blues notes, and now all of a sudden the pentatonic goes to. And we know, we can recognize, even someone who's not trained, they recognize when you do that, all of a sudden there's a bluesier element going on, right? What's going on? How you doing? If you're joining, please subscribe. Yes, I'm definitely having fun trying to teach a bunch of stuff right now. So once you know your blues scale, you could also mess around with your harmonic minor scale, okay? Right? That's another, I mean, you don't have to do it in this order, but that's another thing, right? So you got, instead of your regular minor scale, which is, so you're going to raise the seventh. So you got, you see that? It's pretty fucking dope, right? Okay, so know your scales, guys. If you're not working on scales, if you don't know what scales are, look them up. Check out what scales are. All right? Yeah, so you want to get your scales going. Triads, guys. If you don't know what triads are, they are three notes, played together that form up a chord. And so, hey, what's going on, Waggo? So I'm going to give you a quick answer, and then I'm just going to continue with this. So we were starting with some motivation that could really be applied to anybody, just different tips in life, but specifically aimed towards guitars. And at this point, we're going into specific things for guitar. I'm kind of towards the end of the lesson now. Maybe at the end, I'll try to circle back to some of the stuff we spoke about. But I have some notes written out over here on my laptop. So that's kind of what we're doing. And I will take a time at some point for questions and stuff like that. So again, guys, you want to know your scales, your triads, okay? So this is another thing. A lot of people know how to play basic chords. So let's say they got their open cowboy chords. They got their C, right? They got their G, they got their A minor, they got their F, right? But they don't know how to play that in different positions, different voicings, okay? You want to be able to play it in as much places as possible. So a big thing I started with was I went from my cowboy chords, my open chords, to like bar chords. So I went to, let's say, for C, let's say, and then for G, for A minor, right, for F. Right, so that can be very helpful, especially in rock context, like, right? But then it gets more complex from there, guys. There's so many ways you could play, and I feel like a big thing people don't do is learn their triads. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. I could play C in like a million different ways. I could play it like this. 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 Right? That's all C over there. And when you know that, it just opens your horizon so much because you can play it anywhere. I don't have to play my C over here. I don't have to play it over here. I don't have to play it over here. Right? I can play it wherever I want, and it becomes very, very freeing. Okay? Not to mention, it's so useful if you want to get into chord melody. Okay, which is basically playing the chords at the same time as the melody. Please subscribe, guys. If you're tuning in, please subscribe if you're not already. I'd really appreciate it. Learn more triads, okay? I obviously, in this short amount of time, I can't necessarily give you everything, but look up what that means. Look up different triads, okay? Look up different voicings of chords. The more you know, the more you broaden your horizons, the more options you have, guys, the more you're going to be able to do. When you're just stuck to your basic, I don't want to call it boring because they could be absolutely beautiful, but when you're just stuck to your basic C, right, G, A minor, F, like you're very, very limited. You know what I mean? Not to mention that it doesn't always sound good. For example, like right now, I'm using a heavy rock tone. Bar chords are going to sound much better, right? Because it suits this style. I can also play open chords, I can go, and it's not that it sounds bad, it's just that sometimes one would be a little more appropriate than the other. So you want to get to know triads, you want to get to know different voicings of chords, okay? Do not be satisfied with just knowing your chords in basic positions. And then I want to talk about drills, guys. I know that a lot of guitarists don't really practice drills, so they'll just put on a backing track and they'll sit there and they'll try to solo. Right? But you want to develop drills. So maybe at a later point in a later live, I'll give you a whole bunch of them. But a lot of them are essentially just patterns, okay? So like as an example, I'll show you what I mean. There's one that I call 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So let's say I'm taking my pentatonic. I'm taking my A minor pentatonic, right? So one pattern I could use, I would put on a metronome, and I would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can see right away how, like, first of all, it obviously improves your finger dexterity and getting faster and smoother, but it actually, you're going to use it in soloing. You're going to go, you know, right? So you want to get a bunch of patterns. So that's one pattern you could do. I mean, there's really like so many options. I probably on my laptop have like, I don't know, 30 different drills written down. But that's just to like give you an idea. Start working on patterns. You could do skips, which is like using, and you could do this with your major, your minor, pentatonic. I'm just showing it with pentatonic. But you skip a note basically. So you go, right, something like that, and obviously do it slow. Like that's another thing. Like don't try to go too fast. Like do it slowly. If you're going so fast that you don't even know, what I'm saying, you're messing up, then don't do that. Go slower, get it smooth, and then you can work up to getting fast. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. I know that's a famous saying. It's so true. Because when you go slow, you become smooth. When you're smooth, you can go faster. If you're trying right away to go a million miles an hour, it's just not gonna, it's probably just not gonna work. So that's something to definitely focus on. Again, for the scope of this live, I don't think I'm going to go into too many of the drills and exercises. I'll try to do that at a later point. But that's definitely something you want to make a huge part of your routine. I probably do it at least an hour a day. Do drills, do exercises. So now I'm just going to do a very quick review of what we've covered today. And then if anybody's got any questions, feel free to ask me. So I'm going to start with just the guitar specific things, and then I'll actually end with the motivation stuff. Okay, so again, if you're joining now, we're recapping. We're doing a quick 5-minute review of everything we've covered. We're going to start with the guitar stuff, and I'll get to the motivation stuff at the end. So the importance of tracking exercises and having a practice routine. Set yourself a practice routine, track your exercises, okay? Getting comfortable in as many positions as possible, and I stay in situations, and by that I mean physical. I mean standing, sitting. I mean the type of instrument you're playing, electric, acoustic, the way you're playing, eyes closed, eyes open, what you're doing, rhythm, soloing, okay? Different styles of music, rock, blues, jazz, hip hop, whatever, okay? I guess hip hop might be a little less with guitar, but you could definitely convert a lot of hip hop songs very nicely on guitar. So again, if you want to be the master, you got to master things that most people won't. Practice different time signatures, okay? Do 4/4, 3/4, 6/8. Those are some of the more common ones. I happen to myself be working on more of the, trying to work on more of the odd time signatures now. So that could be helpful too, but definitely get 4/4, definitely get 3/4, and definitely get 6/8 kind of down pat. You want to work on practicing by ear, okay? So again, super important. Put on some songs, try to figure out the chords. Don't get frustrated with yourself. It's all good. Play with other musicians. Jam with other musicians. So important. Obviously, if you're able to. If you're not able to, then it is what it is. Another thing, sometimes it's about less notes. Remember, sometimes less is more. It's not always about shoving in a million notes. Sometimes it's about less notes can tell a better story. Also, keep your foot tapping. Be conscious of time, okay? You want that foot tapping. It's your internal metronome, or technically, I guess, in a way, it's external because it's physical, whatever. But you get what I'm saying. It's part of your body. You don't need to actually hear a metronome. Get to know your scales, okay? If you don't know your scales, look them up. Major, minor, blues, harmonic. Funny story, I actually didn't even know what a scale was for years of playing. And man, once I realized what a scale was, I was like, holy crap, how did I, neglect that for so long? Triads, guys, different voicings. Get to know different voicings of guitar chords. You don't want to just play it in one position. Okay, and now just to cap it up, and guys, you can start typing your questions down below if you have anything specific. But I'm just going to real quick talk again. Take advice from everybody, guys. It doesn't mean you have to take every bit of advice you get. Obviously use your filter, your internal filter, and think to yourself like, okay, think to yourself fairly, was that a good piece of advice or not? Sometimes it's not going to be a good piece of advice. Not everybody has good piece of advices, and sometimes they're not even coming from a good place. Maybe they're trying to put you down. Maybe they're just talking, whatever. People love talking, you know what I mean? So sometimes they'll just say shit without even knowing what the fuck they're talking about. And here's the thing: be humble, be open to advice, because sometimes that advice is going to come from the most unexpected place. Sometimes it's going to come from somebody way less skilled than you. And again, this applies to everything. It's not just guitar; it's everything in life. Okay, you gotta be open to that, because you never know where that good piece of advice is going to come from. And last, what we started with, and what I consider, honestly, if you're going to take anything from this entire live stream, this is probably the most important, because everything else is technique specific and whatever. This is mindset, guys. If you want to be a master musician, or you want to be anything in life, create it here first. Okay, if you can conceive of it in your head, you can achieve of it. I'm telling you, I live by these words, and now I see it coming true. And I've seen it for a while, and I've seen it with different things, and it's incredible. It's incredible how it works. So affirmation, visualization, manifestation, they're real stuff, guys. If you don't like thinking of it in a trippy way, like, oh, the universe is giving me it or whatever, don't. Just think of it like, if you focus on that, you'll get there. You know what I mean? Think of it however you want, but it works. So, and guys, and start thinking in the long term. Again, don't think about today. It's not just about today, tomorrow, 6 months from now, a year from now. It's the long term, okay? Just keep at it, keep going. And there's something, what that does for your self-confidence, when you keep going and behind closed doors, you're working, it's incredible, okay? And lastly, back that stuff up with action, okay? So it's very nice to have your affirmation and to have your visualization and all that stuff, but take action, okay? Sit there and take action. Work on it day after day after day, behind closed doors, with nobody cheering, with nobody knowing what's going on. Again, the feeling that will give you when you know you're the type of person who does that is incredible, and the world will start noticing, okay? It might be a matter of time. Again, for me to, get good enough at guitar where really the world started noticing, I mean, it nearly 10 years, you know what I mean? I wasn't necessarily the entire time working as hard as I could have been, but it was a journey, and it still is a journey, and that's the point, guys. Have that work ethic, keep going, and yeah, I hope I was able to offer something helpful to you today. Please subscribe; it really, really helps me. And I'm gonna stay on here another minute if you guys have any more questions. But otherwise, we're gonna end the live stream in a minute or two. I'm so grateful for you guys for showing up. All the people, whether you're here or not, lots of people popped in. So yeah, again, please subscribe. And feel free to ask any questions now before I end the live. I do teach guitar and also private lessons. You can always comment to inquire about that, or check out my Instagram or whatever. If you have any questions, great. If not, I am going to go ahead and end this live, and maybe I will do a review of this sometime in the future, and get some more people on here. But that's about it for me, and it's been a pleasure, guys.